Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video. We're now in the first week of October and I can really see the change in the weather outside. This is the first week that we've had the fire on in the house. The house is getting really cold. It's that time of year where in an old house it's often colder in the house than it is outside in the garden. But the temperatures have started to dip at night times as well. We have had in the last couple of weeks 3 degrees overnight, but it's not been quite enough to take the flowers out yet. So they're just hanging on in there. But we have had a right week of weather. We've had lots of rain, we have had lots of wind as well, and even though we've got support netting out there and we've got stakes and the horizontal netting keeps the flowers quite safe and sturdy by supporting it, the wind was enough that it's taken down a few stems, especially on the edges of the netting where they're not maybe quite as much support as in the centre where they're all together and support each other as well as the netting. So we've lost a few stems, cosmos mainly, dahlias mainly as well in that blast of weather. But the flowers are still coming. We've still got some perennial asters coming in the garden. The dahlias are flowering but more slowly, and we do have bits and pieces of cosmos, the last few sunflowers and things as well. Interestingly, it is only now that the zinnias in the greenhouse have finally decided to flower. Everything is tailing off outside in the garden and the zinnias are only just getting going. So I need to kind of tweak that next year. I need to get my zinnias started earlier, get them outside earlier, and hopefully get them flowering in the peak summer, not in the late autumn time for me. I've always been wary of starting off zinnias too soon because you can't plant them outside until at least June here, where we have definitely had the frost past and they thrive in warmer weather. But I didn't get it quite right this year because I just left it too late to get them established and sowed them too late in the late spring and early summer, and that wasn't enough to get them going, especially when we had that period of colder weather in June, so nothing really came on that well, and then we got a huge drought in the summer, so it just hasn't suited the zinnias at all really. So that's one to work with next year. But in the meantime, just for these last few weeks of flowers where I'll still be making up some jam jar posies, we're going to have a few nice ones to work with. And I'll show you in a minute the wiggle test to show you when it is safe to cut your zinnias, because if you cut them too early before they're mature in their stems and in their flowers, they will wilt in your jar. So we'll take a look at that. I'll show you as well some of my favourite dahlias from this season, because you might be thinking about shopping for tubers and things over the winter time, getting your orders in, and it's always good to think about which ones work well and which ones didn't work so well too. I'll show you some last jars that I have going out on the stall today, just show you the kind of flowers that I'm getting in the autumn time just now, and things that we sowed a week ago. We put the sweet peas on, if you remember. They've all started to come up now, so that's fantastic. I can show you those, and I can also show you some of the other seeds that have started to germinate too. So exciting things in the greenhouse. Everything's growing away nicely. We've got lots of healthy seedling plants, and we just really need to keep on top of that potting on. The seed sowing slowing down now, but the potting on, it really needs to get ramped up so they've all got their own individual spaces to grow on. So I hope you're getting on well in your gardens as well. It would be interesting to know what stage you're at. Are you like me wondering if the next day is going to be the last of the flowers and the season's over because you could get a frost anytime? Or does your season keep going into November, December? Do you have milder weather that means that your first frosts aren't going to come for a while yet? So this time of year, I am still making up jam jar posies for the stall, and it has slowed down in flower production this year much more quickly than it normally does. I normally manage to stretch it out until late October, but it's definitely slowing down faster this year. However, we've still got lots of lovely flowers that I can work with every weekend to get some out on the garden gate stall. And I thought I'd just show you these just now before I pop them out there, so you get some ideas of the kind of flowers that are going in my arrangements at this time of year. It might just give you some ideas for autumn flowers that you want to grow next year. So at the moment we've got dahlias in my jam jar posies, and there's quite a few different ones flowering in the garden, and a bit later in this video I'll talk to you about what my favourite ones from this year have been. Might give you some ideas when you're ordering them, because your tuber orders, normally if you want the ones that you really want, you have to order early so that they don't run out. We've also got lots of other perennials in here at the moment. We've got some perennial blue scabious here, we've got some asters, we have got some Achillea and Astrantia, and the Astrantia and the Achillea are actually second flushes of the flowers, and you normally get them flowering first for you in the summertime, so kind of end of June, July I was getting Astrantia and Achillea the first time round, but if you chop them back after flowering, then they will come again for you at this time of year, kind of September, October time. And the stems won't be as big maybe as they were the first time round, but they're definitely very usable for arrangements, and it's an added bonus that you get that second flush. So well worth cutting your stems back after flowering in the summer, because you will get that bonus later on. Also in here we've got some Helichrysum, we've got some Linaria Canon, and again that's a perennial that I cut back after its first flush of flowering and is doing a second flush for me just now. We've got some Cosmos Purity here that you can see, so the Cosmos is still going strong, and we've got some more Cosmos over there, so that's really pretty. I need to be a little bit careful of things like Cosmos and Scabious at this time of year, because if it really does rain quite heavily, then the petals can get water damaged. So quite often I will cut them when they are just starting to unfurl their buds, and then they can open up in the house for me where they're more protected. So this is another arrangement that I'm just about to put on the stall, and this has got similar flowers in it. Again, it's got asters, it's got astrantia, it's got different dahlias in it. It's also got some alstroemeria, which has grown really well for me in the greenhouse this year. I've had problems in past years of having greenfly on the alstroemeria, but not this year. It hasn't been affected by that at all, which has been great. Also at this time of year, I don't know whether you can see, but there is down there, just see there, that's a scented pelargonium flower, and I love using the foliage at this time of year of scented pelargoniums. And they're also flowering, nice pink flowers. And it's fantastic, nice strong sturdy stems. It's been growing away all summer and it's now nice and strong and lots of foliage to use, and it just smells absolutely gorgeous, so it just adds that little bit something extra to a jam jar posy. I've got some snapdragons in here too, more Helichrysum, more Cosmos. We've got some Apricotta Cosmos there as well, which is one of my favourites from this year, so I'm definitely going to be growing that next year. So we'll have a closer look at some of my favourite dahlias, and I will leave a list as well of the flowers that are in these jam jar posies at the end in my description for the video. So just have a look there if you want to know what the names are, because I know that I can rattle through them quite quickly and it's difficult to pick up when you're watching a video. So I'll just go and put these on the stall just now. So first week in October, and the zinnias are starting to flower. So we've got one here that you can see that's just starting to unfurl its petals. And we've got some down here that are a bit further out. Now the zinnias weren't doing so well for me this year. They were outside in the garden, but because we got a really cold spell at the beginning of the summer, then we had a drought for the rest of the summer, and I was also away for a couple of weeks, and for the first time I didn't have anybody looking after the garden while I was away, so the soil was really dry. They weren't getting the moisture that they needed to continue to grow, and they just weren't doing very well at all. So I dug some of the zinnias up and I repotted them and took them into the greenhouse, where I've been looking after them. I've been watering them as they need it, and they are finally flowering for me. So very, very late on in the season, but it's nice to see them, and I'll be able to use them in my last jam jar posies for the year over the coming weeks. But the trick with zinnias is that you have to cut them at the right stage. So if we have a look here, we've got a zinnia here which is just starting to uncurl its petals. Now in some flowers, if you cut it at this stage, they would continue to develop once you'd cut them and they would open out fully. But for things like dahlias and zinnias, they won't. You need to cut them when they are mature and the flower petals are fully out. So this one here is one to leave, and we'll come back in a week and see if it is fully out and ready to cut. They are starting to look fantastic though. It's really nice to see all the nice strong leafy foliage coming on them, and there's lots of buds coming too. You can see the buds coming away there. So this is Zinnia Queen Lime, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and at first sight it looks like it's fully open and it should be ready for cutting. But in actual fact, it might not be. What you need to do is you need to go and just hold the stem gently in your finger and give it a little bit of a wiggle. And if it feels like it's wobbly and it's not got a sturdy stem there, and if you just press it ever so slightly, if it doesn't feel strong there and it feels quite flimsy, it's not ready to cut. If you cut it at that stage, it would wilt in a vase. So we'll just feel the one behind as well and see what it's doing now. That's feeling pretty sturdy to me. I would say that they are a lot sturdier than they were 3 days ago when I did the same test. They have definitely hardened up their stem slightly, but I would say that they're just a day or two off being able to be cut. I can just feel, although they're not wiggling around as much as they were, it's just slightly soft, the stem up towards the flower. It's not as sturdy as I would like. So I'm going to leave those a couple of days and we'll come back and we'll check them again then and see if they're ready for cutting. So here we are back in the greenhouse again, and we're going to look at the same zinnias that we looked at earlier in the week. And earlier in the week, although they weren't flopping the heads over when I wiggled them, the tops of the stem still felt quite soft. They weren't sturdy. So we'll have another look at them today. So if I just wiggle them, there's no bend in the stem there. The flower head isn't falling over, so that's good. And if I feel up the top, I can feel that is much sturdier today. So that is a zinnia that is ready for cutting. Let's just check the one behind. Again, it's not flopping over when I wiggle it. And if I feel up the top of the stem, much stronger. So these zinnias are ready for cutting and they will not flop over in the vase now. Can see some more zinnias just starting to come now later in the week. I've got another zinnia here. It's not got its petals completely open yet, and if I wiggle it around, it is moving around quite a bit, and I can feel at the top much softer up that stem than the queen lime ones we just looked at. So that one's definitely not ready for cutting yet. So we'll just leave that a day or two until the petals have completely opened out and the stem has hardened up, and then that one will be ready as well. So next up, I wanted to talk to you about some of my favourite dahlias from this year, which ones have been successful. It's been a really funny growing season for dahlias because they really started blooming really late this year. I think because of the colder weather in June and then the very dry summer we had after that, the dahlias just really didn't establish themselves very well. And it was only really when we got into later in August and September that they really started to flower. And then of course the weather started to deteriorate and we got a lot more rain and wind. So the dahlias have definitely had a hard time of it, but despite that we have had some really pretty ones to use in bouquets this year, and here are some of my best. This has definitely been my favourite dahlia from this season. Every year I try some new dahlias, and this one, Henriette, was a new one for 2022. And the reason that I really like this dahlia is because of its lovely salmon coloured flowers. I was missing this in amongst my dahlias. I had lots of dark burgundies and pinks and yellows and oranges and things, but I didn't really have any of these lovely salmon peachy coloured dahlias. And the Henriette one is fantastic because it has really beautiful petals that lighten as they mature, and it's got lovely good sturdy stems. It's about 1 meter high and it has about 13 centimeter flowers on it, and these are just a nice size to use in bouquets. And it's also really weatherproof. So in the last month we have thrown lots of gale force winds at it, we've thrown rain at it, and they have survived really well, and the petals don't seem to be damaged at all badly with the rain, which is a bonus here in Scotland. Next up is Arbatax, and this is a dahlia that I've been growing for a few years now, and it's a really good one. It repeats coming back every year with nice strong sturdy stems. It's about 90 centimetres high, this one, and it has slightly smaller flowers than Henriette, about 10 centimetres. So great for using in bouquets, especially if somebody wants a nice pink and white and purple bouquet. It sits really nicely in that, and I love its contrasting petals where it has the white petals but with the pink edges to them. And it's got long strong stems, and again is weather resistant. It has come through quite a lot of wild weather in the last few weeks and has flowered really well. Dahlia Dark Spirit must be a top favourite of mine just because of its reliability, its great size and colour. So I've been growing this for a number of years now. It comes back reliably every season, and it's got these beautiful about 7 centimetre
wide flowers, which are kind of a burgundy blacky colour, which contrasts really nicely with some other flowers in the autumn garden. And they are slightly smaller, so you can mix them in jam jar arrangements as well as bigger bouquets, and also bridal work. I've used them a lot in that, and they are definitely a great repeat bloomer, weather resistant, and fantastic to have in your flower farm or garden. If you want something bright and cheerful in your bouquets to make a bit of a statement, then Dahlia Ambition is a good one to have in your garden. It's about 1 metre high, and again, it has survived the weather very well, and it has about 10 centimetre wide blooms on it. But the colour is really striking, and it's more of a cactus type dahlia, which is a little bit different to the other pom-pom and ball types that I grow. So just something to contrast in bouquets. So I've been growing Stolz von Berlin now for a couple of years, and it's come back reliably all the time. I was missing a light pink dahlia for my bouquets and jar arrangements, so this is the one that I chose, and it's been great. It's a nice smaller size dahlia, so about 5 to 7 centimetres wide flower, so it fits really nicely into jar arrangements and into bouquets where you can mix smaller and larger dahlias in there. So fantastic for arrangements, very reliable, and it withstands the weather as well. This is a favourite dahlia of mine from this year. It's Dahlia Karma Naomi, and it's a really tall dahlia. It's got about 110 centimetre stems, nice long stems for using in arrangements. And I think it's a colour that I really like in this dahlia. It's a really rich, dark colour, kind of reddy purple really, and it's got nice 10 centimetre wide sized flowers, so great for bouquets and something that really stands out. I think the richer colours I really like the dark spirit and like this Karma Naomi. So great ones to have in the garden to enjoy or to use in flower arranging. So another 2 dahlias that have performed well for me this year are Waianae Gel and Yellow Gel, and they come back every year. They're very weather resistant, they're reliable cropping, you get some really nice shades of colour coming on the flowers. So the Waianae Gel, it's got these lovely peachy flowers with the purple centres, and then the Yellow Gel, it has more yellow flowers that are quite yellow when they start and then darken as they mature, and they come in slightly varying shades, so you never know exactly quite which shade you're going to get there, and it's always a nice surprise. But these ones are nice autumnal colours that really mix in well with Rudbeckia and some of the white asters and things for bouquets, and because they're weather resistant and they're strong stems and they come back year after year really reliably, they've got to be a favourite of mine too. This year my white dahlias haven't performed so well for me. This beautiful one is water lily white, you can see in this arrangement, and also out here in the flower patch. But the white dahlias, including Petra's Wedding as well and Snowflake, just haven't been very high in the number of stems they have been producing. And also I have had problems in previous years with thrips on my white dahlias, which has ruined them enough that you can't use them when you're flower arranging. So the white dahlias is definitely something that I want to work on if I can. I don't know why the production of flowers has been so low this year, but again it could have been due to that cold June and the dry spell over the summer. So going on through October, I'll hopefully get a few more weeks of dahlia flowers, but as soon as that first frost comes along, that will be enough to take out the whole of the dahlia flower patch overnight. It's amazing how quickly the dahlias do succumb to frost. Other flowers maybe will come back, bounce back, but the dahlias, once they've been hit by frost, that's it, they're completely gone, and all the foliage just dies away very quickly. And I'll leave them then for a couple of weeks to store energy in the tubers after that first frost, and then I'll lift them and store them for winter.
Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful finding out about some of the autumn flowers that are in bloom in my garden just now and the things that I can use in arrangements. Maybe you've got some different flowers at home as well that you have been trying out this autumn. What's worked well for you? Just leave a message in the comments section and you can share your ideas with all of us as well. And I hope you liked seeing the zinnias. I know it's taken a wee while to get them through this year, and I had planned on doing a video before about them, but better late than never, and it's definitely good to see some flowers that I can use before the end of the season, and useful to know about the wiggle test too, so that you don't cut them too early to use in a vase. So just make sure that they're fully mature before you use them and fully open to enjoy them at their best, and then they have a great vase life. They should last a couple of weeks for you. I've also been finding that dahlias, although they'll maybe only last last about 5 days, usually in a vase for me. And my house is so cold at the moment that actually I've got dahlias that are still going 3 weeks after I cut them at the moment, and I'm sure it's just because our house is really chilly inside. If you're enjoying my videos, please do hit the subscribe button so that you can follow along with any new ones that are coming out. And next week I am hoping that we'll have a closer look at some of the perennial asters, because they are fantastic flowers for me at this time of year. They're great for filler flowers in bouquets and jar arrangements because they've got multiple stems and lots of dainty little flowers on them. So I really like using them. So we'll have a closer look at those out in the flower patch. I'm hoping that there will be no rain and wind this week so that I can actually show you some flowers out there. And they are probably my longest lasting flowers. They last far longer than anything else in the garden. So even after those first frosts and the dahlias have gone, the asters are still going. So they're a great flower to have in your garden that'll come back year after year for you. So join me then.